Welcome to the Symphony of Realities podcast, boldly taking you where no podcast has gone before. Sit back, relax, and enjoy the conversation as you settle into your X, Y, and Z coordinates within time and space. Here are your hosts, Christopher Anatra and Sean Bond.
Sean, we did it.
Hey, good to see you.
Look at me. I'm changing colors.
Yeah.
As I'm moving with the camera.
Your rainbow body's showing.
Yeah, it must be my... Yeah, that's it. How are you, Sean?
Good. How are you? Like, this should be a good show. Do you have any idea what we're talking about? We're just winging it? I
have an idea. We're kind of halfway winging it. I do have PowerPoints to help guide us through the process, but it should be a fun show, or at least consciousness expanding at the very least. So this show is titled. This is episode 6 of the Symphony of Realities podcast, titled "Soft Disclosure in the Eternals Movie Trailer: Step Pyramids, Conjuring Chambers, and More." So there you go, episode 6. We made it to our 6th episode.
And feel free to ask your questions in the comments, and we'll see if we can get to them. Excited.
Yeah. So, people have been asking me, Sean, how we met. And there's different, mythos about that. Do you want to set the record straight at all?
Sure, and then feel free to fill in the details.
I will.
So yeah, we believe we went to a spiritual consciousness event, and we met. When I went around looking for high-powered spirits, and I was training my ability to read who people were, and they're I started meditating and perceiving into the background of it, and people were giving off these energetic bursts off of them and blueprints, and this kind of, it's like a feeling sense that's kind of has its own flair to it, whatever. And I was comparing them to people I know, if anyone I knew in history or concepts in mythos or of importance or future shaking up the reality concepts. And then I met a few different people, and got to sit and talk with some people without disturbing the event. And during the break, I believe you got up or whatever, and I was talking to some people, and then I went to the restroom, and then I met the glorious restroom. Yeah.
The magic restroom.
Yeah, there was this part of the stall that opened up, and it went to a hidden room, and
a Stargate.
Yeah, the women don't know this, but men put a whole bunch of money into making the restroom have secret entrances to things, and that's
portals.
Yeah, man cave, whole concept.
Pocket universes.
Yeah, and we get our important work done. Yeah, I've heard women have something similar sometimes, but sometimes it just I used to also do, I worked at restaurants and some stuff and I would clean out some of the bathrooms when I first started. My God, I don't know if that's a commonality, but the women's restroom in that place I worked, my God, it's they didn't even want to, they missed the seat everywhere, and water was all over the place, and pee, and it's just why?
Okay.
Do they hate this place, or what is this? I don't know. But I'm men, can be pretty awful too. They don't give a crap about the place.
Literally.
It's everywhere.
Okay.
But what was your story on that?
Yeah, so like obviously I didn't know the infamous Sean Bond or anything. So we went to this event. We just happened to be at the same event at the same time, and there was a break. So using the restroom, washing my hands, and out of the corner of my eye, I see the door open and in comes Sean Bond, and I'm washing my hands, and you came right up to me, and you go, "I know who you are," and I'm like, "What? What are you talking about?" And then you whispered something in my ear, and I'm like, "What?" So, but that's how I met you, and it was pretty cool. And I think, I don't think we spoke again for like many months after that. Maybe we did briefly on a text message or something, because that event was on the West Coast, and we both lived on the East Coast. So, but yeah, that's how it was. So that's how we met, and then we kind of forged our, joint interest, relationship, consciousness expanding, what the heck is going on in the universe, holographic, etc. And so, yeah, and so here we are. So it's really cool. Like, and you were really good with reading the Akashic records, and you taught me so many different things. And it's like, even now, like you help me out so much, and we go back and forth, and we kind of verify information with each other. So that makes it a lot of fun.
Exactly, and same with me. You teach me a lot about the business world, and help me expand and grow and thrive.
Abundance.
Yeah. There was a handful of people that were very interesting at that place, but like I read like in the beginning, like, oh, I got to talk to that guy, and I didn't really get a chance to, because you were like in like a fair seats away, and like, I don't know, everyone kept rounding me up, talk to me, but like eventually I saw you, and I was like, okay, I got to tell people these things, because it has a chance of letting them know, so they can expand into their greater power and then change the world. And like I didn't like know that we'd be good friends in the future or anything, but yeah, dropping little seeds.
Yeah, it's really nice how that worked out.
You don't have to say who you are or anything, but
no.
Like, did it like impact you in any way to think about it?
Yeah, it did. It actually really did, because at first I was like, what is he talking about? And then I'm like, oh, okay. But yeah, but it definitely like put me on a little bit of a different path than I was on before. That was, I would call it like more of a higher timeline path. So I think that was good.
Maybe I'm wrong, but if I'm not mistaken, didn't you say that somebody else used that identity with you previously before I talked to you?
Yeah, that's true, and I didn't believe it. I'm like, nah.
So I'm not even the first person that said that. That was awesome.
Yeah, so it was. Yeah, I just didn't understand. It was just, and that's the way all of us are. Like people that are listening, and that are attracted to this information. In my opinion, there's the whole issue of, who were you before? Was this your only life? Reincarnation? Were you blah blah? So there's a lot of people that are watching that are awakening. Everyone's in their different spot, and it's like it's just really interesting when you start to put pieces together. And then you realize that you might know people from past lives, and, good things, bad things, neutral things, etc.
Exactly. And I think also somebody else asked if you were that, and they didn't get any hints about it. Yeah. And like that freaked me out too. So I was like, oh yeah, good confirmations. I'm not just like crazy or something.
Yeah.
But whatever. Yeah, and we can get back to the subject, but it's since the gist. And then we met over terracotta.
Yeah, we went to Philadelphia. We saw the Terracotta Warriors at the museum, the Philadelphia, I forget which museum, but one of the big museums there in Philadelphia. They had some of the actual terracotta soldiers there from China, which was like really interesting. And some place on one of your playlists, some places, one of our old videos of us doing that, I believe.
Yep, still got it. Yeah, that was fun. And yeah, learning about the technology of making clay soldiers and how that works in the unseen protection, and even the purpose of having that many made.
Exactly. And they're all unique. When you start looking at the terracotta, it gets really fascinating because they've done actual facial analysis of each terracotta, including the horses, and everyone's like unique. So there's like a lot more going on with the terracotta than people, realize. It wasn't just like people making statues that are like duplicates of each other. It goes far, far beyond that.
Yeah, like if you were like, oh, this is taking forever, let's just make one mold and like do that over and over again. It would either have to be an intricate, and there's like even that movie with the mummies that are like, oh, are they somehow people frozen as clay or some weird thing, or clay inanimates that can then become animates? I don't know.
Yeah, it's interesting you say that because it just reminded me. There's, Brandon Fraser. He did those like mummy movies, and there was one of the movies about the Dragon King or something like that. The terracotta were involved, and I believe there was a pool of liquid mercury in the movie, and then that ties into what we're going to be. One of the things we're going to be talking about later. Because
wait, was that? I didn't. Was that in the third one? Because that was at least in. I saw that in the new one with Tom Cruise.
Oh, maybe that's where. Maybe I'm getting that confused. Okay. In any event, there was something related to tomb, crypt, pyramid. Liquid mercury was involved, and on the second part of what we're doing today, the first part we're going to focus on the Eternals, the movie trailer. Obviously, we haven't seen the movie yet. And then the second part, we're going to get into more Egypt things and the concept of more of the step pyramids and conjuring pyramids. Part of what I covered in one of the last Quantum Businessman Symphony Realities videos I did, to kind of add some things I didn't actually talk about. So you just triggered that thought. So before we go on, like, what's going on in your life, Sean? If you want to bring people up to date about Sean Bond and.
Sure, we're making video products. I'm Sean Bond, PsionicLeague, and we're bringing people together under the common strategy for the planet to help the emergent humanity in psionics and the ability to have mind over matter to bring peace and harmony to the world and improve everything in aspects of life. So yeah, if you go to the site, we have some products up going into initiation, which we'll do more shows on, which will be fun, and how to get this whole thing going. Initiation into the game, the real life game, with the first module goes into learning your controller and tapping into stats and reading your body and esoteric anatomy. And then reading going deeper, so like deep mastery into muscle testing and kinesiology and being able to sense things and translate and going a lot deeper. As well as I got a thing on the eye of the needle, like a huge thing. Any if you're dealing with like target individuals, people that are getting attacked or anxiety attack or whatever, haunted in pain and all that, that'll help anything that's come after me that was really big. I was able to take care of with that meditation. So that'll be a good guided meditation if you guys want that. And I think I also uploaded a psychic activation video, and some other products will be coming up as well. So feel free to go on that. I'm going to make it kind of like a thing that you can making courses and abilities and build onto it. And I'll be doing that with also the Quantum Businessman site, and we'll be bringing abundance products up to the world to help you survive and thrive in this world and be strong. So, and let us know with lots of comments. The more comments, the more, because I gotta get this guy motivated, because bring out his gifts. Yeah. Bring it, because the world wants it, but you guys got to be vocal. Tell him how much he should share how he got to be so abundant with you guys, and then he'll make some products, and it'll be good.
Yeah, definitely.
So right now we've been like, there's a lot of people like, oh, you're just doing this for money. You're using the Mandela effect to get money, and it's like we're losing money. You don't like nobody's paying any of us for anything. And if you go on his site and it goes to like services, it says soon coming, like meaning he has nothing. So there's nothing making money. Thank you so much for like lumping him into the, those elites that just like look down on citizens. And he's not like that. He's self-made. He didn't get money from his dad. It's like all that. So we're going to be coming out of that and be like, oh, okay, we lost a lot of money. So let's, we're going to start making products for it. So at some point we guys like, you don't know what you're talking about. Just stop it.
Okay.
Stop it.
Okay.
Not you, but like the people that keep telling me you're only doing this for money. You stop it.
Yeah. You're
doing this for money too.
Yeah. Yeah. I really like making these videos. I really like it. It's like it's well beyond a hobby. And it's just like, I call it like helping to awaken the sleeping dragons, because there are those among us that have these abilities that we don't even know about. So it's time to like start to like activate them. And now the time is right. The time is getting, as we progress, time is getting better and better for these things. So thank you, Sean.
Thank you.
Yeah.
The dragon thing, I absolutely agree with that. I want to see more of the people that have been dragons, elemental programmers, management for this planet and other planets, to wake up so that they can take their power, responsibility, and make this place a better world, and teach things that will last in the future and survive against evil, and thrive in moral code, truth, peace, and freedom. So
yeah,
good.
Absolutely. Yeah, and for myself, creating more videos as always, having fun with that. I'm also part of the International Mandela Effect Conference, IMEC, IMEC, and we have a show that we do once a month. The next one's on October 27th. This one's going to be kind of special because our guest for that show is Tom Campbell, which some people may have heard of. He's the one that used to be associated with Bob Monroe at the Monroe Institute. He wrote a book called My Big Toe, or My Big Theory of Everything. And he talks about something called the larger consciousness system and the avatar nature of ourselves. And, so that's going to be a great show. I'm excited about that. That's upcoming. We'll be doing more of these. And there's also a really interesting thing we're going to be doing on Open Tables about pandemic, how can I say this? Mandela effects. Because one that's come into my awareness that I was not aware of at all had to do with the last pandemic we had in the United States, which was in 2009. It was the swine flu pandemic, and how almost 100 million people were vaccinated. There were shortages of vaccines. Obama was on the news all the time. Get vaccinated. They were doing it they were focusing on pregnant women and children, and then adults would get their dose last. People were wearing face masks, and I'm like, this was only
a weird order.
Why? So we're going to explore that. I don't want to get too much into it, but one of the side effects of the vaccine for some children was mild to severe narcolepsy. And so all these articles, all these news reports started coming out around 2013, like making a link between that possibly and the vaccine. But of course, the government said that wasn't the case. It's coincidence.
Just randomly narcolepsy just spawns out of nowhere.
Yeah, and it made me almost
like all diseases.
I know, it made me think about like spiritual narcolepsy. Like what is that? Like could something have manifested physically that was more of a spiritual nature? So there's all these interesting things we're going to bring, and it's going to be a part of it's going to be free and part of it's going to be on Patreon, because we want to say a lot of things that we wouldn't be allowed to normally say.
Ooh,
So
you're starting the nice, wonderful Patreon. Yeah. And tell people in the comments, tell them how much you want this information on products and abundance and weight and all the different subjects you want him to make, because he's not going into money because he doesn't want to appear as what, the elite appear.
yeah, no, not at all. So that's gonna be a really interesting show. Yeah, so those are some of the things that we're working on now, and let's start our show. I'm gonna call this the E show, because it goes from Eternals to Egypt. So, okay, so here's our first slide, the Eternals. Now,
Is that the original poster?
I don't even know. You know what? It's funny you say that, because Angelina Jolie has dark hair here, doesn't she?
Well, like,
Did you?
I mean, it might be, but the people's, like the kid at the bottom, is that like a real?
Wait, you know what? At the bottom, does it say November of 2020? It's a little too small.
So maybe it was like held off.
I don't know.
Held off for a while.
I don't know.
The pandemic.
But that's a good point, because I did see a lot of photos of Angelina Jolie, and she had blonde hair, obviously in all the new trailers. But in the older stuff, her hair is dark. So
maybe she has the ability to change to a blonde or something.
I don't know. Or we got a weird timeline thing going on, one or the other. I don't really know. So
maybe like somewhere in between 2020 and 21, they're like, no, you got to be blonde now. And then they just switched all the footage.
Yeah, and she plays a character named Thena, and somehow Thena is associated with Athena, from Greek mythology. So that, like, I don't really know all the details of all these different things, but when the movie comes out, we might have a whole show just on the movie. But now we're doing a show on the trailer. So, yeah. So the Eternals are children of the gods, and this is from Marvel. They bred few in number and were immune to time and death, like the gods. They lived apart from all other living beings. So, and I guess there's like three categories. There's Eternals, Deviants, and Humans. So this slide is about the Eternals. So, Sean, how would you expand on these Eternals, children of the gods?
So this is a fun topic. When I first found out about this, when I was diving into comics and stuff, there appears to be a lot of soft disclosure in comics, and the writers, I think it was like with Jack Kirby and Stan Lee and all the other greats, they seem to know a lot of things and have some people around them that are sharing with them a bunch of concepts and diving into mythos a lot in history, and wonder what they're reading. Yeah, so I'll kind of go back and forth with how this comic universe may relate to concepts that we find in reality if you go researching down the rabbit hole. So there's this concept with celestials in the comics. So I'll put my hand here to represent the comics and here to represent reality. So in the comics, celestials, they're like these giant humanoid, whatever you want to call them. They're like titans, or like even bigger titans, celestial minds, planets that can even inhabit bodies or form bodies. Like in also this Guardians of the Galaxy, they went into Guardian Galaxy 2, that Star-Lord's Chris Pratt's dad, whose name is Ego. Interesting why they call that Ego. I wonder if there's symbology with Ego in that movie. Yeah. And he's like a planet, and he has a version of him, physical manifested form, that then goes out to the universe and picks up chicks. And then he had a son, Chris Pratt, and then he essentially gains power when he's closer to and or on the planet, and same with Chris Pratt. He appears to gain superhuman abilities when he's on the planet, and then I don't want to spoil the rest, but it's pretty interesting. So celestial mind concepts, and that going into the concept with the Greek gods, the Roman concept, where our planets have the same name as these gods, and vice versa, and people would look up in the stars and associate them as the gods. But science will go into, oh no, they only saw that and believed that. Like, okay, so that's throwing out a lot of mythos of like them physically manifesting and having children here. So there's the concept of the possibility, hey, maybe these planets started incarnated as well as direct manifesting bodies here to represent themselves to the people, and then direct humanity, and also breed with them, and then would then introduce their celestial or planetary genetics to us. And that is something that people can read and track back with, like what I give in the PsionicLeague and like the introduction to the game, your ability to read DNA and track back DNA lineage introductions to you, and then activating the technology, and then what abilities are then, and like the evidence based on that. So, and then there's a bunch of evidence of demigods and lineages that have come into history, so that's similar to that. So the Celestials seem to have created, they have came to Earth in this comic book mythos, and they met the divine feminine elder goddess that's called Gaia, which will be the planetary incarnate version of Earth, that then came there, and she gave them a group to, like, as a peace like arrangement. She gave them a group of, like, kind of in between what we know as humanity and the ape species, which the apes seem to be in the comics back then, more prevalent instead of like what we know as humanity. And she gave them something in between that's like a missing link type of thing called the Wanderers. And they then divided that into three groups of the Celestials that then experimented on those, whatever you want to call them, Wanderers, the missing link. And one was given to a guy that destabilized the genetics of them, like a third of the group, and then made it so that their evolutionary process and mutations went rampant, and those became the deviants in this concept.
Yeah, so you brought up deviants. Let's go to the next slide, because I think the next slide is the deviants, as we're on that subject. Yeah, the deviants. An ever-changing and destructive failure. Again, this is from Marvel. Structurally unstable, each new generation of deviant appeared in new and monstrous ways. They were in a state of constant war, and the mythos is that they're the evil version of the Celestials, genetic experiments that went wrong. Okay, so that little intro for, as you're talking about deviants.
Yeah, and Thanos is one of them. So go into that, the Mad Titan, like, branched off of that, and there's like a whole mythos behind him in the comics. So that and another group would become like given access to unbridled, like, cosmic power, and those to tap into pure cosmic power and given kind of godly or angelic appearances, and those became the Eternal. And the third group would become humanity, and they were kind of given a implanted with a latent gene this is in the comics, that would then have even greater potential than the other two groups, but it would have to be cultivated and flourished. It was what would be the comic backstory to what the mutant gene is, or the X gene, or what became like the X-Men and all the people in the future that have genetic superpower traits that come online through puberty or stress or whatever other things.
Let's go to the next slide, because the next slide, I believe, is about the humans. A species bred with true balance of structure and disposition. Although a destroyer, the human was capable of building for peace, destined to inherit the earth and belong to it. And this particular image that's with this slide is from the celestial ship, and coming down from the humans. And probably before we go on, we probably should play the trail. I think we've got a trailer queued up. Maybe we should play that next, and then we'll continue the discussion about it, just to kind of give people more of a background.
5 years ago, Thanos erased half of the population of the universe. But the people of this planet brought everyone back with a snap of a finger. The sudden return of the population provided the necessary energy for the emergence to begin.
How long do we have?
7 days.
We're Eternals. We came here 7,000 years ago to protect humans from the deviants.
Why didn't you guys help fight Thanos? Or any war, all the other terrible things throughout history?
We were instructed not to interfere in any human conflicts unless deviants are involved.
By who?
We need to find the others.
I haven't seen some of them for centuries.
Hi.
Hello.
This is what the end of the world looks like. At least we have front row seats.
You know what's never saved the planet? Your sarcasm.
We have loved these people since the day we arrived. When you love something, you protect it.
You can't protect. Any of them.
I bet you built the perfect safe house. I mean, what's this even made of? Vibranium?
Fall collection. IKEA.
So yes, so I'll give everybody some. Hey, and the video wasn't taken down for showing the trailer. Woo.
Thanks. Thanks, YouTube. Jeez. Okay. Yeah, a lot in there. Wow. Well, what do you want to say about that before I go more into depth?
If we can go back to the PowerPoint. Okay, what was let's go to the next slide. Oh, okay. I went a little sideways with this one, but yeah, so no, I was gonna go a little off topic from things that were in the trailer, but yeah, Sean, you can continue your conversation because I've interrupted you long enough.
No. Yeah, go ahead and off topic, and then we'll go back to it. That's fine.
Okay. Yeah, so in the trailer, you see their ship coming out of the sun, going into the sun. Doesn't really make it that clear, but it's a ship and the sun's involved. So is it possible that suns are portals? They're more than just big balls of hydrogen gas, that type of a thing. So I wanted to throw that concept. I've said it before. I've said it in some of my videos. I'm just saying it again, because I think when you understand how the holographic reality works, what's real, what's not real, etc. Like, is it possible that, the suns could be a lot more than what modern science teaches us what they are? Do you have any comments about suns and portals, Sean?
Sure. And I see you have the volcano. I just put up a link to a video of a giant unknown whatever ball of something that's harvesting energy off the planet. If you wanted to play that video, just turn off the sound because it doesn't matter, and then you can kind of go to second 35 in the video, Heather, or whatever, if you can get that up. That will show it like detaching from the sun. So it's like, oh, what is that? Oh man. So there's things interacting with the sun. I used to have videos of UFOs coming out of the sun, like these big orbs and stuff. A lot of my playlists have been getting deleted, my videos. So I guess I got to download them all now before they all go.
Yeah. So Sean, I see you've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 6 links.
The last one is the sun harvesting one.
Is that the one we got on the screen?
That's the one of the volcano. The last one I sent after the cow one, and then we can talk about the cow one.
So the very last link okay. So we'll have Heather, our behind the scenes producer, cue that up for us.
Yeah, so there's a lot of history and evidence behind this. A lot go into mystery schools. So like you could potentially, if you wade through all the garbage, because YouTube's full of garbage, and there's a lot of people that fake stuff and edit. I'm not, but there is real stuff. If you find it, and like definitely save it because it may not be there forever. That one, and then go to 35 seconds in. And then just let it play without the sound. And then if you can full screen it.
Yes. So while it's playing, so it looks like a lot of like hydrogen gases are coming up to like an orb shape at the bottom. Am I looking at that right?
You see that big orb, like it was a spherical, but it was in the shadow. Yeah. That's huge. That could potentially be bigger than the Earth, is essentially, and it was closer, and it looked like it was taking energy from the sun, and there's like even zoomed out versions of this, and you can like look further into this. But yeah, so there's things like that people can look for an observation with the sun, that the crazy videos out there. But if you can play that volcano video previously that you had, go for that. I'll just like go into like the topic of conversation.
Okay.
There's also mystery schools that would teach remote viewing and astral travel and dreaming body, where you dream and send yourself to the sun and explore the different realms there. There's like the solar cults, the sun worshipping mystery schools, the Solarians. There are a lot of things for this. A lot of Egypt will go into this. Even Christianity is, a lot of its stuff is based on solar aspects. But people can send their consciousness to the sun. They can travel there, meet their higher self version of themselves that immigrated the solar system. You can meet aspects of gods, angels. There's a whole bunch of collectives of beings in the sun, a bunch of realms, and it can lead to other places. So there's a bunch of UFOs that haven't this video wasn't deleted. I'm glad, but of UFOs that seem to enter in and out of volcanoes. If they use it for geothermal power, that's very likely. But there seems to be, if you wanted to go with technology to find ET bases or something, I would say starting around volcanoes might be a good place to look for a hotspot.
I would agree with that. Like I also am of the concept that volcanoes could be over stargates as well. In that particular, when we're done watching this, if we go back to the slide, I talk about, this is related to Atlantis, but basically the third and final big cataclysm, happened in the area, according to what I read, and I believe you read it too, in the Bermuda Triangle. And there is an area off of the Bermuda Triangle. It's underwater. It's called Plantagenet Bank. Okay, it's basically an underwater volcano, or it was at one point an underwater volcano. Some kind of magnetic anomaly is there, and could that be the Stargate to the antiverse that I talk about? When the U.S. Navy had something called Project Magnet, and Project Magnet went for many, many years, I think from 1960 something into almost the 90s. They were going through and looking at different anomalies. The Reshat structure in the Sahara Desert was one of them. The other place was Plantagenet Bank. And a lot of people have heard of C-Lab, for example. So C-Lab was launched in 1965. And of all the places in the world the U.S. Navy could have brought down their underwater observation, they chose Plantagenet Bank, which I found to be like very fascinating. Is there a link to that? I believe that there is. And one of my upcoming videos I'm going to make, it might be a mini-sode, it might probably be 10 or 15 minutes, about Plantagenet Bank. And also, I'll take everyone down the rabbit hole with this as well. There is a video, it was a news report of this young girl who did this genealogical research about the US presidents. And she found in the video that maternally, they all had a common ancestor. And that was King John of England, who was also a Plantagenet. It was like a family, very brutal, warlike family, at least from what I've been seeing so far, the Plantagenets. What's the link? Is there a link to the antiverse? But I believe we have this video queued up. It's like maybe a 2-minute news report, but I think people might find it interesting. It's funny how like professional genealogists never made this link, but this little girl did it, and she actually won some kind of an award for it. But let's see if we can play that video.
Great things for history.
George Washington, Thomas Jefferson, William Howard Taft, and President Barack
Can we turn up the
Obama.
volume?
One young girl traced them all back to one common ancestor.
They're all cousins and all grandsons of John Lackland.
It's the first family tree of its kind, pouring through more than 500,000 names for months. 12-year-old Bridge Ann d'Avignon discovered that all the U.S. presidents, except Martin Van Buren, are related to the former King of England, John Lackland Plantagenet, signer of the Magna Carta in 1215.
Mildred Reed is his first great-grandmother on George Washington. And on Obama, Mildred Reed is the 10th great-grandmother.
It started as an assignment to research her own lineage, tracing it back to roots in France. But Bridge Ann wanted to branch out.
Well, I think we just all go back somewhere. It's just a matter of proving it.
She started with George Washington, but unlike other professional genealogists that only looked at the male family lines, Bridge Ann was able to link the presidents together using both male and female ancestry. Before this, historians had only been able to link 22 family trees.
She kind of created a triumph of women's studies here.
Bridge Ann also figured out she's an 18th cousin of President Obama, something she hopes to be able to share with him in person.
I've written a letter to Obama, but I just gotten standard reply. I hope to meet the president and explain it to him.
In Paso Robles, Adam Rakusin, your Central Coast News.
She seems very proud of it, and I appreciate the work. I don't I'm not exactly proud of nepotism.
Yeah, but
let's keep it all in one family.
Yeah, isn't that
All
though
the power.
interesting? Yeah, like what, like, is there something behind the scenes going on? And yeah, so I found that to be very interesting about how there was that link, Plantagenets, Atlantis, et cetera. So I'm going to be digging a little bit more deep into this, but so this is definitely like one of the episodes we're going sideways a lot, but it's fun. We'll keep people's consciousnesses engaged.
Yeah. People need to know that all their presidents are related, and the choice, the illusion of choice is laughable at this point. But like, yeah, they'll just change their names and they'll front them and keep them in a club just to maintain power. It's this crazy thing. Also, I've heard that a lot of the U.S. presidents, as well as the Queen of England and a lot of other things, have relations to Vlad the Impaler and some other not so great figures in history. So it's interesting.
Yeah, that is interesting. It's interesting too about how she found the link maternally. And so like when you do genealogy studies, it's always like they do the genealogy based on the mitochondrial DNA. The mitochondrial DNA is almost always from the female side. And then, the mitochondria, the consciousness energy within ourselves. So there's all these like links, like all these ways you can start going down rabbit holes, but I believe that they're all things that join themselves together. Like there'll be answers to things. Like when we get into the Egypt section of this, I think we'll be tying in some information about Egypt and how the pyramids worked that maybe people didn't really fully appreciate before. So yeah, it's all like super fascinating to me. I love this.
Yeah, Aurora Bloodlines. And oh man, with all that you went into a lot. So like, yeah, with C Lab, I didn't know about the C Lab thing. The only like growing up, the only thing I knew about was C Lab. There used to be a show on Adult Swim that would make fun of it, and at the end of every episode, the C Lab would blow up. And I was like, oh, is this a real thing? This underground sea thing? Apparently, yeah, there are. And there's a bunch of them. And there's also deep like going into the rabbit hole of deep underground military bases, or DUMBs for short. DUMBs 2 is on continental shelves, and there's the underwater bases. So there's probably more than people know about, and because like, when's the last time you audited your taxpayer money, where it would be going? In the black budget too, and the Pentagon losing $2 trillion. Whoops. No accountability.
All right.
But
so, yeah. So I went a little sideways with that one, but if we go back to the PowerPoint, we're gonna. Yeah. Okay. So this is the Eternals, and I put Saint Germain here. But so I'll have you talk more about this. But the Eternals. Immortals, including there are fabled Chinese people, Japanese, Saint Germain, angels in human form, gods such as the Olympians, demigods that are immortal and walk among us. And then most are positive. Some are super vampiric, such as the succubus. There's an example, I'm not sure if we'll play it or not, but of a movie called Beowulf and Angelina Jolie. She's in the Eternals. She's also in this movie too. Plays like a succubus character, etc. So, with that setup, what would you like to talk more about the Eternals?
Yeah, I guess I'll just finish up with what I was going into before with the comic and the history that people can look down and rabbit hole, and then we can talk about this and play the video for sure. Yeah. So, so in the comics, they're like saying, oh, the Celestials made the Eternals, the Deviants, and humanity. Interesting, a genetic experiment in which they go into, oh, we took a species that already existed on the planet, the apes and whatever Earth, the Gaia gave them to tinker with their genetics, and then which has more information behind it, like adding their genetics and other stuff that can be soft closed in the rabbit hole of the Anunnaki, which is like the royalty lineage, the royal line, bloodline of. When you go down like the rabbit hole of Anton Parks, I'd recommend as like a really good translation. If you go down Zachariah Sitchin, there's like some skewness and some manipulation and like some agenda driven stuff in there, but you know, some of it's, you know, okay. They'll go into, you know, what science until fairly recently perceived as the oldest civilization with Samaria, and like, oh, where did we get bread and beer and writing from? Oh, and when you go back to Samaria, they say they got it from the gods. And then so the Anunnaki royal lineages, and then like you know, people will go down different rabbits hole with that. Breaking it down, they're a hybrid. Supposedly they're a hybrid race that's like a bunch of royal lineages and bloodline genetic engineers that like tinkered with their own genetics and their evolutionary process, went around different places in the galaxy collecting genetics and adding it to theirs because of the technology they knew about. But they're mostly like after a war, a peace treaty between Syrian B and Orion lineages brought together, and the royal factions with that then had a peace treaty. And then there's concepts of a mobile solar system and like things with the concept of Nibiru, and I definitely got to get a clip of that. Like there's a Scooby-Doo clip where they mention Nibiru, so I'll bring that up. And Nemesis, which might be a dwarf star that rotates around, and then somehow it slingshots from star system to star system with a advanced engine in it that allows them to have more control over it, and even go out of phase and be camouflaged. I don't. And then when you go down that rabbit hole, there's a lot of fear and like, oh, it'll come back, it'll destroy, it'll cause like floods and stuff. I don't really believe that, because I think they have more control over it. It's not something that they want to just do as a cyclical thing. And like people want to apply the like the coming of the second sun with that, though I apply that more to Sirius. The closer we're in a binary star system with Sirius, the closer it gets, the greater amounts of consciousness you have, because another sun is closer to you, which will directly affect consciousness. The golden age, when it's closest, farthest away, Iron Age. Precession, the equinox, the great year it goes into. So yeah, with that, and there's a lot of things with Sirius. Sirius collected a lot of genetics as well. Orion, there's a bunch of species in there, like the Nordics, the reptoids, the insectoids, and they like the reptoids branch of Orion's branch off with something that people go into Alpha Draconis. So they brought all that genetics to us, and the Syrians like are associated with humanoid, long skull, like these blue humanoid people, feline races, canis races, the canine. I've also tracked back a bunch of lineages that Earth adopted from there, and like Sirius A especially, but also B. B is a little bit more resilient, kind of like DNA that it collected. A is like got this harmonious garden world type of realm, a bunch of realms about where it would adopt refugee species from dying worlds. Same thing as what Earth does. And I see a lot of immigration coming from there to here, and that populate the various realms that we have. Things like the Celtic mythos, the Japanese mythos. I've seen a lot of Chinese lung and Japanese lung type dragons come from there. Sirius A. Sirius B has more, I've seen hardened kind of species. Yeah, so that goes in the Anunnaki, and so they brought a bunch of genetics here. There's claims of them taking a species that here and tinkering with it and changing the genetic, rapidly evolving it, but also wanting to use it for slavery and like mining and doing work and making things and all that. And messing with the genetics and having the key to the tree of good and evil, the tree of life, goes into everlasting life or immortality in the chromosomes. That's locked, and telomeres and other stuff that you can go into that. Let us know if you want us to go more into longevity stuff for future shows. And there's evidence for it. If you look at chromosome 2, it looks like 2 chromosomes fused together. Also transposable, retrotransposable elements of DNA and jumping DNA that seems to give evidence of splicing and adding genetics that weren't originally there and tampering things, as well as there's like a method of introducing genetics through viruses that will then add on a genetic line that seems to also gear into like how things are engineered. But there's also the concept of what changes and programs DNA, like light, frequency, cosmic rays, X-rays, gamma ray, all kinds of different types of frequency, because the DNA is like an antenna.
Exactly. DNA is it's like an antenna, and it's always like morphing and changing depending on our environment. Exactly. And as I'm listening to you talk, so most people today, they understand about like evolution, and we came from the mole or the rats, or I don't know, monkeys, etc. But I think people are going to start to understand the concept of something called forced evolution, which is basically these genetic type experiments that we are ultimately the result of. So all these types of things like that you're talking about, that we're seeing in these movies, like the Eternals, introducing concepts to us about, whatever, is all parts of little pieces to the puzzle. And I always tell people that they should just like pay attention, like maybe to the things we say, what you hear from other sources, and then everyone will be able to put these pieces to the puzzle together in a way that fits properly, without someone like force feeding them anything. So we're like, what we're saying are clues. In the Eternals movie, could be clues, could be soft disclosure things. So for people to just continually keep an open yet skeptical mind about things, to find that balance between the two.
Exactly. And where you've seen like hints of discrepancies in like the Bible, right? Like,
well, Mandela effects, or just,
well, that like lead like to like beyond the story that's talked about in the Bible, with like we made man in our image, like, and they say "our," so there's like plural going into multiple gods or lower G gods, because it's like not saying that there isn't one above all, which is a comic reference. They have a character called the one above all that represents that. I like the reference one within all, or source within all sources, to represent like it's within you, so that you don't give unless you want to like unite with them in a positive way. But sometimes there's manipulation, so be careful. But yeah, go within. But lower G gods for sure, there seems to be represented.
Okay.
Have you heard of the concept that the Bible it used to be different, and there's multiple versions of them in the past, and a lot of scrubbing and some burning of the old versions, and like there used to be multiple gods referenced in the Bible, and then they kind of amalgamated all of them as if they represented the one God, but they were like representing different originally.
Yeah, exactly. The Council of Nicaea, and how they changed things around, even how the books of the Bible in the New Testament were written hundreds of years after Jesus and the apostles, had died, and so forth. There's so that's a whole other deep subject. But yeah, absolutely. There's definitely elements of truth of what's still there, but there's also a lot of perversion to it. Whether it was, the Vatican wanting to whatever, cement their belief versus this one trying to cement, whatever the case was. So,
what do you remember about the Nephilim concept?
Yeah, so that concept would happen before the flood of Noah in the Bible, and basically these angels saw how beautiful the women were, the human women were, and they decided they wanted to materialize into bodies, and they, had sex with women, and then the result was their resulting offspring were the giants, the Nephilim, so to speak. And from the way it's portrayed, that they were not necessarily the best people in the world. They were stronger than regular humans, and they really took advantage of that.
Right. And yeah, we should definitely go into the evidence for giants later in the show, because I remember you referenced that in one of your episodes before too, with Abraham Lincoln and stuff.
Yeah, the whole concept of gray eyes, right? Being related to giant DNA, which is was very interesting, because Abraham Lincoln, crazy enough, had gray eyes. So, but yeah, was he related? Did he have any giant DNA? He was a pretty tall guy. But yeah, so there are all these little things you can find to help fill in the blanks. Sean, are you on fire over there?
I lost Sage.
Okay.
Coming up. Yeah.
As long as you've got a fire. But all right, are we ready to go into Egypt, or is there any last thing you want to?
Yeah, no, we got.
We're only halfway through the show.
All right, so yeah, I mean, we can make more on it, but I guess we should ham this out so we don't have to address it anymore.
Okay.
Yeah, and so the Celestials seem to represent titans and gigantic forms. There's references to there's possibly Uranus and Kronos, which are also referenced as members in the comics. The fighting over what would they do with the Eternals.
Yeah.
There's mythos with that, and it's not exactly, it's weird because it also represents Uranus. You could see that as the heavens or the sky above, or the being that represented that, and then Earth below, and then them constantly, and then Kronos coming and mutilating his manhood, and then taking over. And they reference Kronos as a better or nicer. It's I'd probably say nicer at the time, at least, but they're all pretty selfish. And then especially Kronos later got more mad. And when I read a lot of my clients and stuff, and me, and things that I'm dealing with in wounds and things that have happened in soul trauma, there's evidence for what's the battle of the Titans and the gods called? It's in the comics is called. They also have a version of this called the Titanos conflict. Interestingly, but they have something like that. It's Titan something battle. And yeah, there's reference. There's a bunch of stuff going into that and evidence for it. So people want to either say that, these were just the planets in the sky, and the people had wild imaginations. Maybe there is, because there seems to be some evidence for it. But
yeah, I mean, yeah, just to add to what you're saying is all these coincidences. Why did they call that underwater volcano off Bermuda Plantagenet? It's there's all these clues that you get everywhere, but most of the time it's that's an interesting name.
It's true. So do the family own that, and maybe they're doing things with it, and they're this is ours, don't go here.
Yeah, or maybe that was called Plantagenet Island, which was one of the islands in Bermuda where there was the Stargate, where there was the entrance exit to a wormhole Stargate antivert. So there's all these different possibilities. But I just out of all the names I could have called it, Plantagenet was what they came up with. So you're right, naming the planets Saturn and Jupiter and Neptune, and is it just coincidence, or the mission to the moon, the Apollo mission, coincidence? Why do they name these things after deities, etc.?
Yeah, with that volcano thing with there's a lot of stuff going in the Bermuda Triangle. So people have books for days on that. But yeah, and energetic. There's big places of power which would go into like, oh, why did parts of Atlantis even want to go around there, or like why do you find pyramids underwater around that area? And with the Stargate thing, yeah, I do read that there is a wound back in time linking to the antiverse. So the power would come with the place's ability to do that, but I don't think Earth wanted to do that. It's like a forced opening type of thing, wound for sure. But yeah, and it would have utilized like Stargate technology to rip that open, unfortunately. But whatever, that hopefully that wound gets healed more and more. I don't really recommend just any person get entangled with that as if they can avoid, because a lot of it's an entanglement trap that's dramatic. And so the goal is loving detach from it and get everyone else to detach from it, and then have it shrink down out of reality so that it has less effect on everything, and nothing is keeping its authority to remain open in the fabric of space-time, and then it would collapse.
Okay.
There's like beings from both ends of the gate that are trying to keep the hole open from it shrinking down, essentially. With so Celestials could be the Titans as a soft disclosure reference, and lineages of giant humanoids, which will go into that. There's a bunch of evidence for that, news articles, skulls, fossils that have been covered up and stolen by the Smithsonian and kept in their basement. I know people that have found some bones and stuff and shown me, like, and these giant stone spear axe heads and all this kind of stuff that you can lift like normally as a person. Okay,
yeah,
so go ahead.
I was gonna say, even like we were going to talk about it maybe in another episode, but like the Tartarians, right? All of the advanced scientific knowledge that they had, including, objects that appeared to be for like large people, like for giants, whether it be a large like rifle and all these really kinds of very way ahead of its time technology that they had. And that's a whole other show.
We should definitely do that show. Yeah, they seem to have more of a positive relationship with some surviving lineages of giants that where they utilize them and work with them and valued them. So that's pretty interesting and impressive, and make structures and books and stuff for them. There appear to be still giants that live. They're rare, if any, on the surface. I've heard stories about like soldiers in the Middle East that were sent on a mission that ended up a bunch of the first team getting killed by a big giant, and them mowing down a bunch of rounds of machine gun ammo into a giant that was like picking up people and biting them and some crazy stuff. So there's some cannibal solitary giants apparently on the surface. Most of the ones that I read are underground. There's concepts of stasis pod stuff, which we can bring up the possible evidence for that too.
Right. There's so many things to talk about.
Yeah, right.
There really are.
So Celestials. So the Eternals would have soft disclosure on genetic engineers, the Anunnaki, the giants, the Greek gods, the Egyptian gods. I see a lot of them have like DNA interacting with Sirius B and stuff, as well as the Anunnaki. They seem to all show up around the same time. Some people like to relate them as the same beings. I kind of see some discrepancies with that, but I understand the need for like to make it simplistic in the overlay, but it doesn't always work it would more go into territories around the planet they would divide amongst themselves. Then also the first concepts of Adam and Eve, the first of what we know as Homo sapien, and the first genetic experiments seem to have been sterile and long living, and multiple of them, not just one, until they got to where they had the tree of life and fertility. So that's some interesting concepts that people can look into. And there's concepts of Lilith may have been one of those concepts, and when people go down that rabbit hole, there's a fairly dark mythos with her. You know, the feminist movement like to take her as a thing, but I think there's some Satanist infiltration with that, because when you interview the Satanists, they see her as a like a demon or a succubus, queen of succubuses kind of thing, and be like the unholy feminine, and a bunch of satanic high priests marry her, and they come to her and like law ritual sex and stuff. So you know, not really. It's very haunted energy in my perception. But
keep that sage burning as you're.
Yeah, right. Yeah. So there seem, and with the deviants, that kind of goes in the concept of more genetic experiments, where I've heard and tracked back and seen in various evidence for different civilizations having to do with like the Greek gods or the Anunnaki or Egyptian gods, where they will experiment with genetics and then make hybrid species, or take a species and then, oh, this can hold this species, and then if I do this things with the embryo, it will then unlock this thing that was dormant or residual and not dominant, and that becomes out dominant, and it like brings up a whole new lineage of species, like in magic, and there's like a mythos thing with Harry Potter that took that from an older magical theory of like basilisks, which is older. Like, oh, if you put a frog on over a chicken egg and do all these right things, then it will change the embryo of the chicken into a basilisk. Or if you do the opposite, it will become a cockatrix. There's some actual science with that. If you take the embryo of a frog and you shine with a laser on top of it the blueprint of the genetics of a salamander, it will change into a salamander.
I've heard that someplace.
So like Russian science is doing that, and so like like the chicken has DNA of a T-Rex in it. So if you were to know what to do, you could change, and like scientists are doing this now with chickens and turning them into like dinosaur like chickens.
That's all we need.
Yeah, that's exactly what we need. They'll be tastier. So there's things that can do that. So I read that going back, a bunch of these genetic engineers did similar stuff with this, and they brought out things like in the Greek mythos, like hydras and manticores and all these things. And some of these I track back. Some of them are fertile, some of them are infertile, but have life extension on them. I've tracked back some like hydras that are like deep underground and like sealed off cave areas that don't need to eat. And it's like weird how a lot of these ancient relic species near extinction have found some way to hibernate and accumulate energy and not needing to eat. So it's like some interesting thing that may go into deviant stuff, because in the comics they go into like the deviants went underground and became like the subterraneans. So there's a bunch of races underground that will go. There's a lot of evidence for that. There's like the Nagas, the Orions and Syrians like to make a bunch of these inner Earth pocket bubbles of reality with an artificial sun and then a bunch of forests that they can then rescue species from other planets and then bring them here and then put them in that garden setting. And it's not like hollow. It's like a misnomer because this is a huge ass planet. So there's all these, like if you're in there, it would look like you can't even see the sky. It's so big. But even that is a small space compared to all how big the Earth is. And so there's a bunch of those that it can be comprised of. Also, there's huge underground seas and like tunnels of riverways and that connect to the sea. Like there's a huge ocean under China concept. It's like, oh, what species is under there? Do you want to go fishing?
All right. Sean, that was a lot. That's a lot of information.
Yeah. So
every 30 seconds could have been a show of what you talked about.
So the Celestials are apparently in the comics. They're to safeguard humanity from the deviants. So then that goes into, oh, maybe there's a bunch of different races underground or whatever, wherever they are, that are protecting the planet from certain things that they feel responsible for, but not everything. And especially not the smaller drama having to do with our government. But if anything big happens, they're willing to step in or stop that. Or if there's a huge destruction event like an asteroid, I've even seen concepts of beings and the Earth being able to prevent that and even restart the timeline or go back in time a little bit and prepare for it. And then that goes into time travel and the time core protection.
There you go. Time core. That's a whole other, I mean, there's so many topics on top of topics. Are we ready to go? Are we ready to go to Egypt?
Almost, but because this connects to your presentation, like with Atlantis fall.
Please.
They apparently there was like a debacle over whatever Uranus and Cronus in the comics that like, oh, what are we Uranus said they believed they had rightful rule over Earth, and so they wanted to do that, and then Cronus was against that and was more peaceful apparently, and whatever you want to believe with that. So your Kronos won and Uranus left and settled in the near the planet Titan in the comics, which we have our planet Titan as the moon of, it's not planet, moon of Saturn, and then that goes into offshoot of like where Thanos comes from. So they had a civil war that kind of wiped out a lot of their population so then that dwindles the Celestials down to barely any. And then after a period of time in the comics, the Celestials, the big giant people, came back and they were pissed because the Eternals weren't doing their job. And
that character that has like the 6 like red eyes.
Yeah.
In the like, trailer, like that's considered one of the Celestials.
Yeah, like that big helmet. On,
yeah.
Whatever that is. Yeah, it would look kind of humanoid or other things under it, like a big Titan. So that showed up back, and then they were pissed out and pissed off around the time of what would be Atlantis fall, and they then call this the Great Cataclysm. So apparently, like while they had this war and they were dwindled down in population, the deviants took over the surface world and enslaved humanity. So let me know if that sounds familiar with around the fall of Atlantis. And then that's what pissed off the Celestials, and then they sunk Atlantis. And in the comics, it lists Lemuria as one of the capitals of Atlantis, which I don't really agree with that, but because it's like a whole different continent and civilization that's kind of different. But that's pretty interesting that comics knows about that stuff and it wants to integrate it into the thing.
Exactly.
And and then after a while of after sinking Atlantis and all these gods doing all this stuff, the remaining deviants went underground, and the Eternals allied themselves with the Greek gods to protect Earth from bigger threats. And it like lists beings like Zeus and Odin and all these beings working together. And after a while, the Eternals came back and looked at everything and were like kind of getting disappointed with how all the gods were interacting with humanity on a big level and messing with them and causing all this trouble and chaos and breeding with them. And so the Celestials asked them to take a step back and take a more hands-off approach, like, which is interesting with the scenario now, like, which allows for like, oh, were the gods even ever around, or was that all made up, or did someone tell everyone that's in the divinity path to take a step back or hands-off approach, and we have to do things ourselves and be left alone so that things can come back to order, and we learn from our mistakes. We don't give our power away to external gods and things, and we learn to take our sovereignty and responsibility for ourselves, possibly. At least they, in the comics, they go into like how it was messing with their experiment and what their goal was for humanity, which is interesting. So yeah, and I'm pretty much done with that. And a lot of the Eternals' names are interesting, like gods and demigods and stuff.
Yeah,
sure
exactly. So what I'm thinking is that when the movie finally comes out in the beginning of November, because I've seen all different dates, November 6th, November 8th, November 11th, whenever it comes out, we'll definitely have to see that, and then we could maybe summarize, or there might be some key things that we see in the movie that we had no idea they were going to expose. So everything we've been talking about is basically from the trailer. So, and we have, and people can see like there are like all these other videos that make like, they break the trailer down and they show like Easter eggs and, et cetera. So there's a lot of information. So I'm sure it's going to be a cool movie. So I can't wait for that one to come out.
Exactly. And then if people ask, like, what's the point to digging down these rabbit holes and seeing all this? Like, oh, what is the point of us? What is the purpose of humanity and the experiment, and like why we're here and what we're meant to do and what we're going to become, and what is this latent gene and these mutations and the Great Awakening and us coming into our power, and what does that look like, and why this talks about us, like, and evidence I track back that we're a super hybrid that's tens of thousands of species and all together, and a little bit all broken down, kind of muddish, but at the same time, after we heal ourselves in our trauma and repair our DNA, if we make a big comeback, and then we have infinite evolutionary potential after that point that has no limit. Pretty interesting concept. And then like, can you track back these god lineages and who they went into and interacted? And do you have any of these lineages? And like with some of my clients, when I track back things, if you go to the gym and you have this ability to read people's DNA, there's a good likelihood you'll find somebody with Hercules DNA. He got around quite a bit. Zeus like most of Greek history, most of it is pretty much caused by Zeus not being able to stop himself from and his sexual appetite. So, like when you look at that and how much of Greek history that is, why would people make that up exactly? Like, is that symbolic with what we see
exactly
in the sky, like this big ball Jupiter? Oh, it's really sexually active. What is?
Yes, exactly. And what are all of its moons? Like, what do they represent? Yeah, exactly.
Oh yeah. Like what's with the harem of moons?
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. All right. With that said, we'll segue into the second half of our presentation about Egypt. So I've been getting like a lot of information that's been flowing to me about Egypt, and some of it is just so cool. But I don't know if people realized it, but there's officially 118 pyramids in Egypt. So if you go to Wikipedia, you can find out there's 118. I've heard there are over 200. Most of them haven't been like officially classified yet. But one of these pyramids is called the Pyramid of Medum. Now, I never heard of this pyramid. It's located by the Saqqara Pyramid. And for those that don't know, Sean and myself, and with a group of others, we went to Egypt in 2018. And we went to the Saqqara Pyramid. We were in that area of Dozier, Egypt. And I was doing all this crazy research about every place we were going and where we were going to go visit and so forth. This Pyramid of Medum, I never heard of before. And if you look at it from the outside, it doesn't quite look like a regular pyramid. I also just recently found that it was one of the places that Napoleon's Savant army went to in 1799. So for people that have like been watching my videos, I talk a lot about Napoleon because he did a lot more than people thought that he did. You know, like a lot of people have a very negative view of him, and you know, everyone can have their own view, but I tend to see some of the positive things that he did. But when his Savant army that went there, which was made up of, you know, archaeologists, philosophers, all these different people that would study, later become what's known as Egyptologists, this is one of the places they went to. Now, when you look at this from the outside, it doesn't have that typical pyramid structure, but it does have the same proportions as the Great Pyramid of Giza. And when we go to the next slide, there's an illustration there that will show everyone. Okay, this Pyramid of Medum originally had it was a regular pyramid shape over it. Inside of it was the whole step pyramid concept. Okay, and it was 7 levels of steps. There's like 3 of those big steps that are still like underground, so to speak, but we know that they're there. So this blew my mind because I, like, literally until recently, I never heard of it. Have you ever heard of the Pyramid of Medum?
No.
No.
There's apparently like hundreds and thousands in the desert under like sand waiting to be discovered. What is it?
I'm sure.
11,000 in South America. Like, I think it might be. Is it just South America, or because that might, if I include Mesoamerica, that might be a different number. But whatever.
Yeah, no, but there's so many that, you know, oh, that's a mountain. No, it's not. It's a pyramid with like soil over it. Yeah, so there are all these discoveries waiting to be made. And the way I see it is that, you know, this is related to Mandela effects, but as we raise our frequency, it appears that a lot of these things are going to be discovered. They were always there, but now we're just finding out about them, so to speak. And that goes back to the whole concept of statues that have crystal eyes, for example. I never, like, obviously I've made videos about that, but those are just some of the things as an example of, as we raise our frequency, it's almost like, what do they call them? Time capsules. Like we're going to be discovering these things as time capsules, so to speak, that'll help us fill in the blanks to how things work. And this blew my mind here. So if you look at the bottom picture I have here, there's one of these like black granite. This is all full of sand, but if you put water on it, it exposes it. But basically, it's those consciousness energy, I'll call them prison tombs, like they had in the underground complex at the Serapeum of Saqqara. Wouldn't you know that at this particular pyramid, they also have found those as well? You know,
so it's a themed architecture design.
Yeah, that, and you know, if they did hold the consciousness energy of powerful beings that were able to power the pyramids for their whatever purposes that they had, you know, it would make sense. They're like, these are almost like the battery devices, so to speak, to power what the step pyramids were. And so, like, the more you dig into it, like, I don't know how many people talk about this, but I don't know if people will think, oh, that's just a funny box that they have there, or people that kind of, I know, really, do most people take it to the next level? Do they really understand? But I think that as these things are being like revealed and shown, like people like yourself and me and others will start to be like, oh, well, the Akashic records say this. And then all of a sudden, all like these blanks will start to be filled in. So if we go to the next slide, this is about basically the concept of step pyramids, like conjuring pyramids. So conjuring treasure is something that I talk about, objects of power, changing the weather, conjuring entities like higher dimensional beings, such as what you might call a lowercase g god, or example, from a higher realm to possess into a body, a 3D body in this reality, resurrection from the dead. So these are like, when you read into the step pyramids, these are the same types of things that you read into, right, Sean?
Absolutely, yeah. And I'm going down a lot of the truth pathway of conjuration and making lists of how to reverse engineer the ability. There's a lot to it. Most people that go into magic with it use it for like summoning entities or invocations, all that. But yeah, there's concepts of like direct manifestation, and there's legends of this happening in history and with saints and magi and summoning great power objects or whatever. And where did the Egyptians, where did the Mayans and Aztecs get a lot of their gold from? Who?
Exactly.
I wouldn't say it's all the pyramids, and probably like a large. There's too many pyramids for me to say, and then it would be a large amount of gap in generation. For it's probably like a old Atlantis tech that'd be more strong and capable of conjuring physical objects, and they would probably have lost the knowledge of how to do that, and then still be attempting to do it through the same design and still being able to do some magical things like summon weather and spiritual awareness and knowledge and gifts and abilities and authority and entities and spirit guides and things that they can talk to, or if like going to the dark thing of possession or whatever, because a lot of things going on in South America where they would do sacrifices for people on top of these things, which have a huge effect spiritually. Not necessarily good, but like they would believe that if they didn't sacrifice people, the world would end, which to me, I don't think it's on the crux of the world continuing spinning, but like holding back and satiating dark, powerful, multidimensional predators, yes. Though I think that's it's like kicking a can down the road, similar to what our government does with the budget. Let's just put it on the next generation.
Let's just raise our credit. Yeah, that's all. That's the answer.
But,
yeah. I was going to mention too, for people that may not be aware of it, that so when you look at a step pyramid, every step would represent a dimensional frequency, so that you can tell how many dimensions that pyramid could conjure something based upon how many steps or levels there are to it. So if usually you'd count up from our dimension, which is 3D. So if there's like 4 steps to it, that means you could bring things down from the 7th dimension, so to speak, where things like gold and precious gems are more plentiful. And
you can just manifest that stuff like in the higher dimensions. It's easier to just create things and it be tangible in that reality. So here it's harder. It's a harder difficulty for people to understand.
You got to make a really work with it. Yeah, exactly. There are all these steps you have to go through. And then there's so basically concepts like legendary places like El Dorado, did they ever exist? And if they did, wouldn't it be interesting if there were step pyramids that were involved in the area. Like, oh, maybe that's where El Dorado got all of its gold and precious gems. So I just wanted people to be aware of that, because what we're talking about here is going to start lending itself to the remainder of this podcast. So if we go to the next slide, this is again another pyramid that I never heard of. It's called the Red Pyramid of Dashur, Egypt. I never heard of it. It's also known as the North Pyramid. It's next to, or about 1 kilometer north of, something called the Bent Pyramid, which I had heard of before. So it's fun, in the text there. We'll play this short video. Well, we'll play this video later about, they're talking about like bats shitting upside down, but this will make more sense when we get to it.
I know a new variant.
But before, I'm sorry, Sean, not to jump you, but if you look at the picture on the right, and we actually have a close-up of that. So if Heather, our producer, can find that picture and put it on the screen, it shows the inside of the North Pyramid or the Red Pyramid.
Cool.
And
for that other pyramid you showed me, I read that seems to interact, that first one that's kind of like collapsed, that it seems to interact when I like read the main technology of it.
Yeah, what do you
interact with awakening and consciousness growth. So it seems to, if it's fully activated, it's, most of the pyramids aren't that activated. They still have an effect, but it's essentially like their radius diminishes. But if they're fully activated, it would affect the entire planet's consciousness, and then connect to the grid and be evolving people. And you can even read what were the original programs focused for evolution in the building design. Like, yeah, even down to the size and the shape of the blocks. Scientists of different types will go deep into this. Have you seen those like documentaries on, like, for some reason, if you take the shape of each of the blocks of the pyramid and compare it to the circumference of the Earth, and it matches up in different ways? It's really interesting. It's like, how could they even know that?
Yeah, you know what? It'll be interesting to see if you read anything from this Red Pyramid. This is what we're looking at on this photo, is the inside of it. And when I first heard about this and saw this, I'm like, look at the steps. Like, people like why do they have these levels? Like, it didn't seem to make sense. But again, it had these levels. It looked like, when I was counting them, it looked like there were about 10 of them. And then there is a lower part, which was a chamber or something, and it was it was removed, or they're not sure about why it was like empty at the bottom. And that's going to get into when we talk about liquid mercury a little bit, which is an interesting part of how these pyramids may have worked. So yes, so there's before we get to the liquid mercury part, there's this channel called Uncharted X. Highly recommend it. There's a guy on there named Ben. He makes the videos. He travels all around the world. He does a lot of stuff in Egypt. And he went into this video, and him and his guide were talking about this substance that was in that chamber area. So we'll play part of that video if we have that ready to be queued up. Yeah, okay. No, I'm not sure if we have some, got some text on the screen about what they're talking about. Because when they're in the pyramid and they're talking, it's like very echoey. But they notice that there's like dark liquid under each of those different levels. And they were trying to figure out where that was coming from. Bats don't shit upside down. It's just, one theory is that it was from bats, right? But I don't know if they've ever tested it. They probably should test to see what that substance is. But I think it's a big clue. Like, it's a big clue as to what's going on inside that pyramid.
Right? Like, I remember some documentaries ago, they would find different types of acid that led people down the belief that some of the pyramids were used to generate power, and like an acid alkaline battery concept,
Okay.
and running tunnels, and so there's a possibility in that too. And a lot with the limestone and rivers running over limestone creates a big electromagnetic field. So
Yes.
there's evidence for that too.
Yes, exactly. And you'll notice like the way you get into it is like a little side. On the side, there's like a small area to walk through, just like the Great Pyramid of Giza. Like there's all of this common architecture that you can start to find. So we can stop this video, but I thought it was like really interesting because people are trying to figure out what all this stuff means, and I'm like, they should have me and Sean go with them on these expeditions, and we could like go into what the Akashic records say, and not that you would believe it, but it would be like, oh, never can't be, but somehow is.
Yeah, guys, everyone out there, family, let us know if you're doing exploration journeys and stuff, like, beside whatever the government's doing to compress people. If whatever.
For travel.
Let us know if there's possibilities to travel and you want to explore and read deeper into things and maybe even make documentaries. And we want to also continue our goal of forming a group of grid workers, so that we can stay connected around the planet. And like, oh, you're in Australia, oh, you're in Germany, oh, you're in Ireland, or you're in Africa, and like, oh, I was researching these places around there, and like, hey, you should go here and activate that. And we all share information on how to open up chakra points, place of power, the ley line system, which empower us all and make us smarter, better, stronger, understand more. The collective consciousness field grows. The 100th monkey effect. Everything in civilization grows when the ley line systems and the place of power are doing well, because it will share that abundance with its radius field of the people around it.
Yeah.
So let us know if you also want to join the grid working groups, and we'll have a greater expansion in that, and we can all have fun exploring together, even not needing to leave your home, because you can activate things from a distance. It's just kind of weak. It's weaker, and unless you've been there before, then you can do stuff to that version of you back in time when you were there to activate the crap out of it.
Yes, isn't that something? There are those concepts as well. So even if you visit someplace and you haven't fully activated it, there is a way to go back. And because your presence has been there to activate it, which is super cool. So there's this concept that some of these conjuring step pyramids had pools of liquid mercury inside of it. And there, Heather, if you have it, one of the videos was an experiment where someone put liquid mercury into, basically looks like a bowl, and then they put electricity to it. If you can find that one, just to show the magnetic electric properties of liquid mercury. But not just that, it's just that, how did the ancients get liquid mercury? Like, it's hard for modern science to produce it. Yet some of these pyramids, like, you can actually find remains of pools of liquid mercury. So let's see if
cool. And I just sent you a video clip from the Mummy that has the scene where she's in liquid mercury. So
okay. Okay, so this is just showing the experiment. There's a magnet at the bottom of this circular magnet, and they're going to put the bowl on there. And actually, if there's, can we do like 3 times the speed or something like that? Because not that I want to bore anyone with a scientific experiment, but by the way, you'll notice in the bowl on the right side actually has a liquid mercury inside of it.
Very scientific bowl.
Yeah. He may have made a omelet or pancakes in it before.
Yeah, one of the most deadly substances known to man.
Okay, so
They
here's
used to sell it to kids as
mercury.
like a kid toy, mercury, and a lot of people got autism from that, and the government's like, "Whoops!"
Yeah,
Oh
so
my God, that's awesome.
yeah, so just putting like an electric current to it. So it shows how magnetism and electricity really affects liquid mercury. And could that be something that aids in the whole step pyramid conjuring process? They're all clues.
That's a really good point. Also, there's like, you remember in like the Nazi Bell experiments?
Yeah, so anti-gravity uses that concept, right? Of liquid mercury being the thing that powers like a spacecraft or whatever it is, or the Nazi Bell. Yeah,
exactly. They talk about the substance of red mercury, which mercury plus something else they didn't disclose, would make it so that it would give off a anti-gravity field, and then it would allow them to make its own gravitational field separate of the Earth's, and it would be allowed to float. And they go into concepts of how to counteract the field of gravity of the Earth so that it would create lift, and then propulsion from the various angles, and they would experiment with that. So you can go down that rabbit hole too, and the foundations of the secret space program.
Okay, yeah, there you go. So Heather, let's go to the next slide, because I want people to be aware of the Pyramid of the Moon and Pyramid of the Sun in Mexico, not too far from Mexico City. But there were chambers that were discovered under the Pyramid of the Moon and the Sun in Mexico, where they found pools of liquid mercury, including the remains of long skulls, which is something else that I talk about in my videos as well.
Do you have any videos on the long skulls? I can find one for you if you don't.
I don't have any handy, but yeah, that's another topic to get into. But while you're looking for that, let's go to the next slide, which again, so all these things, you start to see these patterns. Like when people start to engage their pattern recognition, they'll be like, wait, these steps, these levels. I remember in the Queen's Chamber at the Pyramid of Giza, there was this cutout in the wall that has that same kind of concept of bringing something from a higher dimension down. So that there are 4 steps here in the Queen's Chamber. Could that have been used to conjure materials or objects of power or whatever it could have been from a higher dimension down into ours? And then on the next slide after that, this is the famous sarcophagus that's in the King's Chamber. Was that an actual sarcophagus? Probably not. Or could that have been an energy device where there could have been some kind of energy that got generated and put into it, or it could have been consciousness energy, or whatever the case is, that helped to power the Great Pyramid of Giza, besides, the gold capstone when that was put on at the top. So all these things are clues. Like we see something, an archaeologist will see something and they'll think, oh, blah, blah, blah. But as things are becoming revealed and we're moving into higher frequencies, I think it's going to become easier and easier for us to connect the dots about how all these things operated.
I agree. Yeah, and they will all come together, and we'll be able to reverse engineer the technology and then build upon it with new pyramid systems and grids. Like the red pyramid, I read that it had a huge protection and fortress technology for the Earth, among thousands of other purposes within it that, of course, they would make to utilize the place of power that they found themselves on and figure out what they could do. It would be a lot of great stuff that you're digging into. I just sent a link to a long skull video by Brian Forrester if you want to bring that up. And above that is the liquid mercury clip if you wanted to bring that.
Well, actually, before you do that, just Heather, just go to the next slide real quick, which I think is the last slide. No, second to the last one on our presentation. Sean, this is one of me and you when we went to back in the good old days. There's Sean in the background. There's me with my sunglasses on. But basically, I believe that at this area we were in Karnak at that time, and there was again one of these like sarcophagus type things, but it looked like it was mostly sealed. Again, was this like an energy, producing device? And I'm just going to go one step further with this. I know you want to talk about the long skulls, but I don't know if anyone realizes that a lot of the temples in Egypt, the floors of the temple were all made of basalt. Basalt is a volcanic, magnetic, electricity conducting rock, which is very unusual, like why they were made that way, because it wasn't from that area. So again, is that a clue? And then in my mind, I got this image of like an Egyptian something, deity or whatever, taking their ankh and putting it into a certain place in the temple and like it lighting up. So there's all these different things. Like I think when we walk into a temple, like we go into Karnak or Edfu or whatever temple you go into, it's like you're seeing like everything's turned off and you're seeing what it looks like after so many years of decay and so forth. But I think back in the day, holy wow, like these temples would have been amazing. I could see these hieroglyphs like lighting up on the walls and all that. So I just wanted to bring that out too, because that's another very interesting thing about how these temples are constructed. And if these pyramids are placed over certain types of places of power that are magnetic, like that video that we watched, so there's natural magnetism under them, and then some kind of an electric or energy is introduced, what does that do? So with that said, we'll now segue into long skulls and the planet Malbec.
Yeah, and with that, with what we know now that's being covered up, forbidden archaeology, the Baghdad battery represents, they did know how to make power back then, an electric current, a certain amount of chemicals in a clay pot, and then maybe
exactly. And that's primitive too, right? Yeah,
and when we went to the one of the places in Egypt, on the hieroglyphics they had the light bulbs. Remember that?
Oh yeah. There is a lot. Yeah, we saw the helicopter and the
UFO.
UFO. Yeah, all kinds of really cool hieroglyphics. I think they try to say it's something else, but I'm like, man, that's a helicopter.
And what looked like a hovercraft that looked like the same one in Star Wars, like in the desert, I think. Like what the heck? So it's probable that this ancient Egypt was way more advanced than people know about, or with possible light bulbs and all that.
Of course.
And even the ability, our mainstream science is kind of, it's about maintaining control over people's minds, but like even the ability to make stones that strong that can last that long in history, they're making something to last. That's greater technology than what we have with our drywall and stuff that won't last much more than 1,000 years. They knew stuff, and they were preparing for big things that would happen in the future. Like, whoa, the heck. And all these resources, and they say slaves, maybe. I mean, it's all hearsay from opinions at this point. But yeah, if you want to go to the long skull thing.
Well, I know we've spoken about a lot. Oh, okay. So we could play part of this. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, let's just finish off with some videos. I'll like go through the chat if they have anything. So this is from Peru. You can go to Brian Forster stuff. He goes deep into this. He found a lot of these in caves. These are covered up. The mainstream science is like, they're just doing head wraps and slowly at birth when they're kids they start. When you look at the kids that they did that to, they look completely different, and they're imitating their gods essentially in their mythos, which goes into their genetic lineage introductions and long skulls, the Syrians, and like deep esoteric with the different hominid species of humanity. There's a bunch. People need to go down the rabbit hole of how many hominids there are. There's the Homo capensis, the Homo florensis is hobbits that are found in New Zealand. They're really short people. Homo nuaticus, the Gigantopithecus goes into like, oh, is there giants like ape, and like there's new footage of Bigfoot and other stuff, but and also the evidence of giants. There's a bunch of hominoid species, and if you go down the rabbit hole of forbidden archaeology, there's a guy called like Michael Cremo that writes a bunch of books that are pretty good in evidence of like how mainstream science will just throw out anything that doesn't agree with their previously held beliefs, and they cover it up, and you got to go through a bunch of hoops, and they'll ostracize you if you go too much against it.
Exactly.
Some will go to archaeology sites. They'll cover up everything, or cover up the entrance to mines, or steal everything, and then they cover up and even kill people to cover this stuff up. So the breakdown of that, there's evidence to describe that humanity is even older than what we talk about, and evolution. I do believe in evolution, but I don't believe in our mainstream description on it. I feel like, and forbidden archaeology goes into that humanity is older, and the different branches of humanity didn't just all evolve in one straight line. They all branched off each other, and it's like, oh, one just started evolving and the other ones were wiped out. That doesn't make any sense. And there's like footprints and fossils of humans that are like way older than what they talk about when we came into existence, that are living alongside other races in older. Who knows? I've even heard there's evidence to describe that there may have been humans back in the time when dinosaurs were around, but not like holding to that. It's there seems to be some evidence to describe that, though that's being covered up. So good luck.
Yeah, I mean, aren't they finding like, was it the dragon? They're calling it the dragon human or something, and that was discovered near the Dragon River of China. That's far older than any type of other human. Yeah, so it's like nobody should like pin themselves into a corner, because all these things are being revealed. And so today is October 13th, 2021. It's a Wednesday. Now, yesterday we were in a. I'm going to bring the sun back into this. We were in a solar storm. It's called a moderate G2 class solar storm. And when reading into that, like I was reading into like a wave of purity that was coming to us with a nice little squirt of truth frequency energy. So I think when these things start to happen, it's helping our planet, and it's making it so that these truths that we should have always known about are all going to be starting to come back, whether it's the long skulls or how step pyramids worked, like the true purposes of pyramids. And talking about that, there's just one last thing that I wanted to cover, which is on our last slide. This is from Peru. It is an area called Aramumuru. It's legends say it's a stargate near Lake Titicaca in Peru. When you look at it, again, you see that step design. You see like that notch. So I think people should start to be aware of, like, when you start to see these things, to be aware that it could have been used as a way to go in and out of higher dimensions from our dimension. So this only has one notch. So I'm imagining this one went to like maybe into 5D, in and out, that type of a thing. But these are all things that need to be put on the table, explored. People like you and me and others that read the Akashic records, like look at them and like for these truths to be revealed. The world, I think, is getting ready for that more than ever in our history.
Yeah, right. And like the legends of geomancy and druids and they could like pass through stone and like to portals like in Stonehenge or whatever, or places like it. And like, oh, is there a possibility that somebody with the right DNA that has the right light codes emitting from them, if they touch that thing, something interesting will happen, or they can pass through it, or whatever, out of phase tunnels or ships, or like that thing in Harry Potter, the wall that's like between the stations at 9 3/4, and you just like run at the right speed. Oh yeah, try that. Or like Vimana, that are these ancient ships in Hindu mythos that are out of phase and in mountains, hidden till maybe their previous owner in their new incarnation remember and then go back to it or something. There's all these legends waiting for us. And yeah, if you're done, if we can show like the clips that I just put up in the chat having to do with the crop circles and the cow.
I want to see the cow one.
Yeah, can we do that at the end? So it's like on a funny
on a funny note. The cow.
Just like do two of the.
Is this a real cow thing, or is it from a movie, Sean?
It's a real.
Okay. Poor cow.
Yeah, the first two videos, and then the one right above the cow comment.
But you hear about that, right? You hear like aliens frequently taking cows. You know, besides like why the cow? What's the connection?
Holy cow, right?
Yeah, holy cow. All right,
yeah, and yeah, we did you want to talk about like our work with the holy cow while she's getting the crop circle video up?
Remind me again our work of the holy cow. Is it related to ice cream?
Yeah.
Yeah, no, you could talk about that, Sean.
All right. Yeah, Heather, are you able? Yeah, okay, cool. Yeah. And yeah, it's just 30 minutes. And so can you zoom in on that?
Did you say 30 minutes?
No, it's 30 seconds.
Oh, 30 seconds. Oh.
Yeah, just 30 minutes.
I'm just gonna watch a gray screen for 30 minutes. That's okay.
All right. So yeah, it's totally old men with rope and boards coming in to do this.
God. I've seen videos like this before. Yes, exactly.
So don't worry about it. Don't believe your lying eyes. You know, it's old men with boards making all these. Oh, and play the second one that's in daylight, and there's actually a few of these, so it's not just like a one-off.
Yeah, no, I've seen this type of stuff, but like it's in full color.
Yeah, and yet I still see like scientific magazines and skeptics and skeptactyls all just like, oh no, it's completely faked. It's been debunked, and it's like if scientists will independent science that's not bought and paid for, because it can be like politicians. Go to these sites and analyze the crops at the microscopic level. It's like changed their atoms and structures, and I got pictures and videos of that. So you know, the global narrative and the governments, what they tell you is an insult to your intelligence, because they bully you into thinking things, and they'll just get you to like, oh, of course. And if you're crazy if you believe that. Oh, yeah, and if you can end with the cow one, that's a funny one.
Is this the cow one?
No, this is that's good.
Yeah, because when it comes to crop circles too, like, isn't the next thing is like, well, what's this an image of? Like, what's being communicated to us from our star family? So
right. The video right above the cow comment. Yeah, right. Yeah. So here's some bit of proof. So it's just not like us talking over our ass or anything. Yeah, and you can feel free to play the sound. I don't think it says anything.
Oh my God. Wait, is that a volcano in the background?
I don't know, but it just goes into that orb and then it darts off. So yay. Can you play that one more time? Just the cow just going off and into the stars. It's gonna, you know, it's the ambassador for this planet. That's Godspeed, you brave soul, you.
I was going to say, if somebody faked that, that's pretty good work. Just with the way it's hanging down with its legs and everything, it's like something's actually happening there.
Yeah. So yeah,
that's a fun way to end the show.
Yeah.
Abduction of cattle. So so maybe our next show we should stay more on topic. I don't know. We went all over Eternals, Egypt, step pyramids, liquid mercury, cows, crop circles. We were like all over the place with this episode.
Yeah, and we got a lot more to come. So let us know if you want to see more of this content, and share as much to many people as possible. The view counts make us more motivated to put out more work. So please. And put your comments and questions in. We may answer them future shows or address them in the comments. I love you all so much. Please keep coming back and uniting and making this planet a better place and spreading the truth beyond the deceptions that we're in an ocean of.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so in conclusion, I would like to sing, dream on, dream on,
dream on,
dream on,
dream on,
dream until your dreams come true. So yeah, thank you everyone for watching. Sending everyone my love. Thank you for your support. I hope to do more things about abundance and helping people understand how they can fine-tune their frequency and remove ancestral things that are maybe holding them back to actually really enjoy life and not have to be worrying about all these other factors that can make things not so enjoyable here. So looking forward to that. Thank you, Sean.
Thank you. Thank you all. Peace.
Till next time.